Hey you all, this is another Monday Night Raw with me, Jess Kendra, and
Tremaine. How y'all doing tonight?
Listen, tonight we got a very good topic. We thank y'all so much for tuning in. Of course, it is earlier than what we anticipated, but you know, we was going to still get the job done. So I'm excited. Of course, this is Monday Night Raw, where we discuss the things that we wrestle with as people.
Man, we got a great show tonight, man. I just want to thank God because this is our fourth show, Kim.
Fourth number of victories.
Hey, man, we doing our thing, man. God is blessing us, and I hope this Monday Night Raw is blessing y'all as well.
Yes.
We got a great topic tonight, and our topic tonight is His grace is sufficient for you.
His grace. That's good.
Hey, I'm ready, man. I'm so excited, y'all, man. I'm glad that we going live tonight. We ain't been live in about the last 2 weeks.
The struggle been
man.
real.
Hey, man, but we back. we back live. So,
yes.
so guys, we got a good word for y'all, man. Y'all tune in, and we going in 2 Corinthians 12 chapter, 7 verse through the 9th verse. And this is Paul, and he's writing to the church of Corinth. And this is the second letter. And what he's telling the church, he says, to keep me from becoming conceited, because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations I have received from God, a thorn was given to me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I begged the Lord to take it away, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. And Paul said this, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses. Not of his strengths. Paul said he's going to boast of his weaknesses. And why he said that? Because the power of Christ may rest upon me. So what we're going to do, I'm going to break this this whole chapter, this verse down that I just read into 3 points. And the first point, Kendra, I'm going to break it down on is...
Y'all, this Tremaine Bible study.
Hey, man, this is my Bible study,
for real.
man. Hey,
this guy's going to be a Bible Sunday school teacher coming to you.
Man, y'all know why I do it like this because, you know, when I was beginning my journey, finding God, you know, what changed me, what put me on fire for the Word and for God was the Word. So if I know the Word helped me out, that's why I want to share the Word with everybody that's out there, because guess what? The Word is what changed me. This is what helped me. So, you know, I'm going to take this, what God gave me, bless me with, what he gave me free. I'm going to give it to y'all for free, man. So, first point that I want to break down on that whole verse I just read is just when everything get good, God allowed Paul to be afflicted. Now, Paul said he was blessed. He was getting blessed with revelation from God. God was blessing with him with wisdom. God was showing him things. The Holy Spirit was working through him. He was saving people. He was healing people. He was, you know, going out different places, man, preaching the gospel. And, you know, he was blessed at that time. And, you know, everything was going good for Paul. And Paul said to keep him from becoming conceited, from letting pride overtake him, God allowed a thorn to be put in his side. Not saying God did it, because God not going to tempt man with evil.
That's real.
But he allowed...
He had to keep him humble.
Exactly.
So, you know what I'm saying? You can't have your money going right, and not saying that everything can't go right, but at the same time, God, it's going to always be something. It's going to always be a reason for you to go back to God and for you not to think that you're doing everything by yourself and that you handling this, because you're not.
Right.
And so what God was saying is that His grace is sufficient for you. Meaning, I don't know about y'all, but I had a few times where I went to the get some money out of my card, and it'd be like, your account is insufficient. You got insufficient funds, and meaning that I did not have enough. But just knowing that in God's grace, it's always sufficient. It's always enough to carry you out. It's always enough to bring you out. You know what I'm saying?
And that's real.
That for me is just amazing. That's always good to know, knowing that my account don't never run out in grace. Not saying you take grace for granted, but the account in grace is never in a negative.
That's right. It's sufficient, man. Unlimited.
Love it.
Man, and I can look at times in my life where, you know, God has been good to me. I prayed for that job, and, you know, I got blessed with it. And guess what, man? I went from here to here real quick, man. It wasn't me. It wasn't nothing I did. It was God. Yes. But I let that success get to me. You know what I'm saying? There's been times where I let that get to my head, and, you know, I'm doing good now. And, you know, and I got proud for. I was Paul at one point. You know what I'm saying? Being blessed, and, you know, just, you know, I thank God, but guess what? You know, I forgot about him as well. You know what I'm saying? When I started getting the blessings. So this is, you know, this is what I'm saying. You know, at that time, you know, Paul was, you know, God allowed him to, you know, be afflicted. You know what I'm saying? To keep him humble. And you know, sometimes we're going to go through things, but guess what? It's all for a reason. So the second point I want to hit is Paul begged God 3 times to take the affliction away. And I know it'd be times where we go through things and you know it get hard on us, and you just begging God, please take this away from me, God, please deliver me. But you know that, like Kendra always say, you know that pain is for a purpose. Whatever you're going through is for a reason. And we do that all the time.
It is, and that's what really keeps me going, and that's what keeps me going back to God, because I know that your pain only propels you into your purpose. So you have to continue to put that purpose over that pain. Like Paul didn't like being afflicted, but he understood that, okay, in my affliction, the pain, there's a purpose for God to keep me humble. So even though he was locked up, he was stoned, he was beaten, Paul went through some stuff. Paul went through some stuff that normal people wouldn't even go through, but he did it. And that's because he did continue to put his purpose over his pain.
That's real, man. And I know for a lot of things I've been through in my life, you know, if it weren't for me, you know, going through some of the things that I went through, I probably wouldn't be, you know, doing Monday Night Raw tonight.
Exactly. Me neither.
You know, my walk with God wouldn't be where it was at. My relationship with God wouldn't be where it's at today.
Without those afflictions.
Exactly.
That's real.
So, you know, that's the second point I want to hit. You know, but Paul, he begged God to take it away. But guess what? Sometimes, you know, if you ask God to take it away and, you know, you're still in the same positions, because guess what? It's for a reason. What you're going through, your storm, the pain, it has a purpose.
That's real.
But last but not least, you know, God told, after Paul asked God, please take this away. He asked 3 times. After that, God said, guess what? You know, my grace is sufficient for you. He said, I'm not going to take it away, but guess what? I'm going to give you the strength. You know, you got the grace, you know, to do what I've called you to do. So, you know, God's power is made perfect in imperfect people.
That's good. No, say that one more time.
I said, God's power is made perfect when you're dealing with imperfect people.
Okay. Now, see, that's good. Because what you're telling people and what you're telling me as well is that I don't have to be perfect for God to use me.
Exactly.
So I can still have these afflictions, and you know, I can still have things that I'm still dealing with and that I have not been delivered from, but God can still use me.
That's real.
That's what you're saying, right?
That's not what I'm saying. That's what the word says. If you go to Mark 2nd chapter 16 through the 17th verse, you know, Jesus, he was with the people, and the Pharisees looked at Jesus and said, why you sitting down? Why you eating with these sinners, with these tax collectors? And guess what Jesus told them? He said, I didn't come to heal the righteous. He said, I came to heal the sick.
That's
not
real.
Only the sick need a doctor. You know what I'm saying? So God said, hey, Jesus is for us. You know, if you sick, if you know you're not perfect, if you know you need the grace, then guess what? Jesus is for you. His love is for you. His grace is for you.
And so, it's sufficient.
It's sufficient.
You don't have to worry about it being, you know what I'm saying, ran out. So there's no such thing as you going too far to where you can't go back to God, because His grace is sufficient for you. No matter how insufficient we feel, that grace got you. Like, that grace is, well, Pastor Jay always said this. Pastor Javon Good have always taught. He said that faith is our grip on God, but grace is God's grip on us. And that's what Jesus came for. You know what I'm saying? For that grace, for man to have grace, and which is why He says you can't get to the Father except through me, except through the Son. So that's where that grace lies. So Jesus came to give us that grace. You know what I mean? So when we stand before God, He don't see us. He see that blood. We're covered in the blood. That's that grace. So God's grace is sufficient for you.
Right. And there's nothing that we can do to earn that grace.
Mm-mm.
You know what I'm saying? Nothing we can do that, you know, that we deserve it. You know what I'm saying? It's been freely given out of love. But, you know, we're going to go down Romans 5th chapter 3rd through the 4th verse. And I'm going to break this scripture down as well, but we're still on the same thing, man. God's grace is sufficient for you. And, you know, when we go through things, God said, hey, you know, I got you. You know what I'm saying? When you weak, I'm strong. You know, my strength is made perfect, you know, in your weakness. So this is what Romans 5, 5th chapter 3rd through the 4th verse is speaking on. It says, we can rejoice also in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, and character produces hope. So suffering, you know, is not a negative thing. Paul said, you know, in that first chapter, verse that I read, he said, you know, he started rejoicing in his weaknesses, because, you know, Paul knew when I'm weak, Jesus got my back. He got me. So when I see, you know, and I'm the type of person, man, I used to be the person that always say this, man, I can't win for losing. Seems like things will be going so good for me.
And here comes something.
Here goes something.
Yes.
But guess what? He knows, God knows, you know, if if I continue to let you go this way, you might get prideful. You
Yeah.
might forget about me.
Yeah.
So he allow.
You might think you're doing it.
Yeah, you might think you're doing it. You know what? You know, and God said this. He said, if you humble yourself, I'll exalt you. But if you exalt yourself, I'll humble you. And sometimes we gotta realize when we exalting ourselves, when pride is kicking in, and you know, sometimes God will, put us in place because He loves us.
That's right.
And He know He can't deal with us with that pride.
Yes.
You know, if
He
we proud,
only chasing the people He loves.
That's right.
So I mean, you can't. I mean, that's just like your mom. You know what I'm saying? She's gonna give you that little, all right, Tremaine.
Right.
Every now and then to let you know, like, I love you. I love you enough to keep you in this spot because I want you protected. I want to love you. And so I mean, that's the same thing that goes for God.
That's right. Even more with God.
Exactly.
But breaking this down, it says sufferings, it produces endurance, it produces character, and it also produces hope. So, I'm going to break down this thing. Suffering produces endurance. What is endurance? Endurance is the ability to withstand hardship or adversity, the fact or power of enduring or bearing pain. So, going through your suffering is going to give you the ability to endure hardship.
That's right.
Because it's going to come. That's just like when you was little and you fall down and scrape your knee for the first time. First time you scrape your knee, you're going to get up, you're going to go to a grown-up, you're gonna cry, you're going to show them where your little boo-boo at. They're going to blow a kiss at it and you make it feel good. But guess what? After about 3 or 4 times, you keep falling and scrape your knee, it's going to get to a point where you're just going to look at it, you're going to dust yourself off, and you're going to keep back going. So that's how God deals with us. When we go through sufferings, we create endurance. Endurance is created within us. So,
Exactly.
We
that's
get
just like somebody running.
Going.
You know what I'm saying? If you out running and you ever ran track, or for me, when you had to run a mile at school, I mean, I was slow. I ain't never been a runner.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I had to have endurance. So regardless of what my body was telling me and my legs were saying, quit, man, quit. And my chest was, and I'm breathing hard, I'm breathing wrong. But I had to have that endurance in order to keep going. And that's the same way it is. The wind's coming against you. Your legs are telling you one thing. You breathing heavy. But you have to have that endurance to keep running that race. And it's the same thing with God. It's the same thing whenever you're running that race for Jesus. I mean, it's going to be you have to have endurance. You got to stand the test of time in that endurance and that adversity. And when people talking about you and all that, you have to continue to keep that endurance.
For real, man. So going on, not only does it, produce endurance, sufferings also produce character. And character, the definition of it is the mental and moral qualities distinctive to an individual, personality, nature, mentality, or identity. So not only does it produce, endurance, it produces character as well. When we go through our sufferings, it molds us into the people that God has called us to be.
I love that because it says identity. Because you don't even know who you are. You don't know your own strength. You don't know your own abilities until you go through some stuff. Right. And then you're like, wow, I could really do this, Tremaine. I didn't think I would make it. I'm pretty sure you done had some of those times in your life as well.
Right.
To where when you go through things, you're like, I didn't think I could make it, but you keep that endurance, and then you find yourself. You find your own identity within those afflictions. That's
real. And it goes back to the first, thing that we just read about Paul. Paul was, on the verge of becoming prideful, becoming conceited because God was blessing him. He was on this high horse, and God knew that, if I don't allow something to happen, guess what? He's gonna fall through pride.
That's real.
So, that was part of his character. God allowed him to go through something to save his character, to save him from being a prideful person, a conceited person.
And to show him.
Exactly.
Show him his identity.
That's real. So, it builds character. And last but not least, it gives us hope. Suffering gives us hope. And hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. A feeling of trust. So last but not least, sufferings produce dependency on God, and it forces us to trust in Him as well.
That is so good. That is really good because we always need something to have hope in. Have you ever, because if you've ever met a hopeless person, somebody that think, oh, I'm not going to never make it, man, this ain't going to never get any better, or, what did you just say about something being wrong? Every time I turn around, it's something wrong happening.
I can't win for losing.
Like I can't win for losing. And I know for me, I'm like, man, I'm scared to even try this because as soon as I try it, it'll go right for a little while, but then bam, I'm right back to where I started again. And God, I don't want to keep failing. I don't want to keep losing. I don't want to keep falling. I want to succeed. Right. But when I make it to the bottom and I am afflicted, it does give me hope. Say, okay, God, look, if you did it before, you can do it again.
That's real, man. That's real. And I want to talk about some people that was in the Bible that went through these same things. That God, His grace was sufficient for them as well. Everything I speak, everything we talk about, we definitely want to go to the Word with it. We ain't just speaking on what we know. You know what I'm saying? We got proof of it. Because it's coming out the Bible, it's coming out the Word, and we standing and we depending on the Word. So first person I want to talk about in the Bible that God's grace had to be sufficient for him is King David. We all know, man, King David went through everything, man. Went through the worst before he was actually king. Mm-hmm. And God's grace was sufficient for him. And the particular story I want to talk about with King David is when he had to go up against Goliath. They laughed at David when he was getting ready to fight Goliath.
But and what was so funny about the story is that the first people to reject him was his family.
Right. They talked about him. They told him to go home. You too little to be here.
What you doing is bringing sandwiches.
Right. You know what I'm saying? and really, what it was, David was not. It wasn't that he was strong. It wasn't that he was a mighty warrior, anything like that. But guess what? He knew that he had a God whose grace was sufficient for him. He knew that what he didn't have, God had the rest of it.
He had already tried him out. That's what they didn't know. Exactly. They didn't know that in his private time, he had already been spending time with God. He'd already been killing things already privately. So it was just taking what him and God hadn't been doing privately and just taking it public.
Right. And he already knew that God's grace was sufficient.
That's right.
Him. And we got to look at ourselves as David sometimes. Maybe we got a giant in our life, and it may not be a person. It could be a particular issue. Like I got a friend that's battling diabetes right now. That's her Goliath in her life. But I talk to her all the time, and she got to know that, hey, God's grace is sufficient for you. When you weak, He's strong.
That's real. Whether it's healing, whether it's finances, whether it's deliverance, whatever it is that you need, God can bring you out. His grace is sufficient. There is no such thing as insufficient funds whenever it comes to God.
Right. And David, he understood this the best. We're gonna go, David. This is David again, and he's speaking on it, and that's why I love David so much. But we're going into Psalm 119, 71st verse, and this is what David said. David said, "It was good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn your statutes." And I can agree with David because when I was going, I didn't learn God's word until I went through something. I was in Houston County Jail when I first picked up my Bible and said, hey, I'm fit to read this thing and see what it's about because I'm tired of going through the same thing. I'm tired of being in jail, tired of going through the same, struggles, afflictions. I'm looking for something better. I want to change my life. And that's when I picked up the Bible. That's when I learned God's word, is when I was going through an affliction.
Mm-hmm. Paul, that was just like Paul. He was arrested, and that's when he did his best writing. That's when he wrote to the churches. Like that's when God was able to sit down and actually talk to him and say, "Okay, Paul, I got you." Those were the times that actually that God was ready to actually pour out and pour into him. And I know for me, I was on the phone with a client the other day, and the guy kept trying to pronounce his first name to me, and every time he said it, and I said it back to him, he was like, "Nope, that ain't it." And I was like, "Okay, now." He said it again. I said it again. He was like, "Nope, that ain't it either." And I was like, "Okay, okay, well, sir, I just call you by your last name." But he was so adamant about me calling him by his first name. So he said, "Kendra, do me a favor." I said, "Okay, I'm over the phone, y'all." So I'm like, "Okay, what?" He said, "Close your eyes." So I'm like, "Close my eyes?" What kind of stuff this man into? Because he has some crazy people call. I'm just saying. So he said, "Close your eyes." So I closed my eyes. He said, "Now," then he repeated his name, and then I repeated it, and he said, "Perfect." And I said, "Okay." He said, "You can hear better when you close your eyes." Now, to him, that might have been something small, but to me, that was amazing because I thought to myself, because whenever we can see our way, we don't listen to God. So, no, I can pay my rent, I can pay my light bill, or I can take this medicine and be healed. And so we're not able to hear the voice of God because we're so busy looking. Right. But he said, whenever you can't see, you can hear better. That to me was like amazing. Like that opened up my eyes to so many different things. It's like whenever you can't see your way, whenever you feel like that grace is not sufficient for you, if you would just stop looking at the situation and just tune in and listen, God is speaking to you. But with your eyes open and you trying to see things,
right,
you can't do it. But if you would close your eyes and block out what it is, whatever situation, the friend with the